I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, or possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam, and thank you, listener, for tuning into this episode of the Oracles with James Tyson. I am James Tyson, and today from Southern Arizona, okay, not me, but them, a wonderful couple, Dwight and Rhonda Hull. Very, very interesting couple. They have been doing paranormal investigations for many, many years. Dwight's bouncing around, I think the last 21 years, he's been poking around Tombstone, Arizona, one of my favorite places. And Rhonda, who originally is from Oregon, is a psychic medium, spiritual teacher, author, and lecturer. And over the last 17 years, she's helped thousands with her psychic and medium abilities, which she helps them to reveal details about some of her clients' lives that bring greater awareness and understanding to not only themselves, but what's out there and around us. We're going to be talking about Tombstone, Arizona, one of my, again, favorite places, one of the most wonderfully haunted, wonderfully active locations you could ever get to. And they're going to talk about a place called the Buford House, which I've yet to actually go to in Tombstone. But what they're saying and what Dwight says, it's probably the most haunted place he's ever been. And that means a lot if Dwight is saying that. Dwight is actually the animal communicator, too. Really cool guy. He is a fellow from Ohio, just outside of Cleveland, and was a peace officer, was in the U.S. military, so we thank him for his service. He has been to places such as Alcatraz, the Sherwood Forest, Tower of London, the Bacardi Factory, the Queen Mary, Mansfield Prison, many, many more. He bounced around everywhere. He has found himself to be an animal communicator going back as far as he can remember, probably the age of 5-ish. So we're going to talk to him about animal communication. We're going to bounce through a lot of the areas that they've been to around Tombstone. Heck, I mean, I even ask him what they think happens to us when we die. And what's interesting is what they both experience is something that a lot of you psychics and mediums experience quite often, is that the entities they see are not just people who have died who haven't, quote unquote, crossed over, but they're actually people who have crossed over, and because they want to come back, they come back, and they actually see those people as well as the dead that haven't crossed over, the lower vibration ones. These ones they see are full on, I've crossed over, I decided I want to come back to Tombstone. That's interesting because I've heard that from a number of very, very intuitive people who literally can walk through a shopping mall and see people looking at them and realizing those people were wearing clothes from the 1800s or heck, from the 1970s, which is frightening in itself. Those heels, I don't know how I walked in those heels. But anyway, those people have passed and have come back because they liked the area. They liked the pub. They liked fishing at that lake. They enjoyed the theater. And they do occupy those places. If you want to follow along, their website is BelievParanormal.com. And the tricky part is the B is B-E-E. So there's a double B, B-E-E-L-I-E-V-E-E. So believe, but just two E's at the front. All one word, BelievParanormal.com. Also, they are on Facebook. One of the cool parts about Dwight, the animal communicator, if you want to go to Facebook and just search Animals, plural, Speak, Animals Speak, and give him a follow on Facebook. Look at some of the video that he has posted there. And also there's some on the website, too, in regards to Dwight's animal communication. Very, very cool couple. They also put on an event every year, and I'm definitely going to make this next one down in Tombstone, but it's a haunting in the desert It's mid-May. We just missed it. It was May 15th to 17th this year, and I'm definitely going down next year. If you can get down to Tombstone, Arizona in mid-May next year, you've got to look it up. That's a haunting in the desert. That's something that Dwight and Rhonda Hull put on. Upcoming events they're going to be at is something coming up in July 13th, 2019 for about an hour and a half. They're having a seminar on animal communication, and Dwight's doing that and I'm going to have to say this out loud, but this is where my Spanish goes sideways, or actually if it's Spanish or a native Indian language from the Southwest. It's Ayachka City Library in Ayachka City, Arizona, and I'll spell that for you. It's Huachuca, or Wyashka City in Arizona, and that's Saturday, July 13th from 1 till 2:30 p.m. If you got a chance, you live in that area, definitely got to show up for that. Talk to Dwight about not only his animal communication, but about all the different things. Pull him aside, definitely talking about some of the things he's experienced in his life. Rhonda, too, brilliant. Her gifts include clairvoyance, clairsentient, clairaudience, basically all the clairs jumping up. Psychometry, which is, when you touch something. It's always the word I forget. When you touch something and you kind of get that energy from it to the last person who touched it. She does remote viewing, and she's a medical intuitive as well as her mediumship. She's this international psychic detective who works with law enforcement, search and rescue, and other things. And please, again, go to their website, Believe Paranormal with the 2 E's at the front, like a bumblebee, BelieveParanormal.com, and check them out. And I'm going to find out what they're up to right now. Rhonda, Dwight, how are you today?
Doing well. Doing good.
Excellent. Thank you very much for dropping by. And I'm very, very interested in anything Arizona and anything spooky. And you guys are great because I'm very, very interested in anybody who does paranormal investigations and is an intuitive or a psychic. Ron, I'm going to start with you. When did this kind of ability come forward in you? What do you remember? How far back does that go when you were a kid?
I was 5 or 6, actually, when I had my first spirit encounter, if you will. I was at my aunt and uncle's house in a little town in Washington, north of Longview, if your listeners know where that is, called Packwood. And my cousin and I ventured out to their barn and went up into the loft. And we were just kind of poking around, and I was sitting down, and here was this man, older man. He was my first experience. He looked as real as you and I. Sort of told me that I was gifted and that not everybody could see him, but I would see, and talk to many spirits. At 5 or 6, it didn't really make sense, but here I am, and it just kind of continued and grew throughout my life.
And when you say it continued and it grew, did you, I guess you accepted you were a little bit different, but how did that affect people around you? And were you getting a lot of beings from the other beings, spirits from the other side showing up and saying, hey, can you help me? Or
when I was young, they didn't ask for help, or the spirits that came to me didn't ask for help. They looked as real as a living person. I did pick up on my empathic and clairvoyant abilities when I was young as well. That kind of hindered sometimes going to school, as you can probably relate. The energy and vibration of the other kids often affected me. And then as I got to be a teenager, you kind of go through a hormonal change, and it kind of frightened me. So I kind of blocked it out for about 10 years. Okay. I didn't want anything to do with it. It scared, the living daylights out of me. I would have people come to me and I just wasn't on the same level as I was when I was younger. And then in my 20s, it sort of awakened again, if you will, and I embraced it and learned as much as I could and practiced and all of that.
Okay, and so obviously you went through that whole post-puberty, high anxiety, all your friends would be dumping their problems on you, and you just wanted to be left alone?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and everybody wanted to come to my house. All my friends, everybody, there was just something about the energy of our house. It was very good. My mom and my grandmother, both very gifted. My mom didn't so much talk about it. I think it kind of scared her. But she was very empathetic and supportive of me. Mm-hmm. I didn't discuss it with just anybody. It was very few people. So,
may I ask, what is this coming through the mother's side of the family, what is the ethnic background of your mother's side of the family? Would that be Irish?
It is.
I want you to plant that in your head. And you and Dwight, that I found over time when I talk to people who are of a much higher vibration, it's Wales, Ireland, Scotland, the top of Scandinavia, the part over top of Europe, a little bit into Germany, and then into the Balkans, and then the coast on the inside of the boot of Italy, France, Spain, and Portugal, and North Africa. And when you look at it as a Caucasian background, that's about as close as we get to being First Nations and going back 300 years, 200 years, living with the earth.
Right.
And not being overly polluted. And a lot of those little areas I've just described are also very, the high populations of what we would call gypsies,
right,
who had a different kind of understanding of spiritualism. And I get that a lot. I will look at somebody, and since 2012, I can look at somebody and actually see that energy, or I can tell that, we'll call it an empath. And I'll look at them and say, who's the Irish person in your family? Or which the Irish side? And they'd stare at me and say, well, that's my mom's side. And I say, oh, yeah, it makes sense. How about you, Dwight? How about your side of the family? Which side of the family do you get your abilities from?
Well, my abilities come from my father's side of the family, actually. My grandmother was a huge influence on me from a very young age. So my ethnic background basically is English, from the UK, Ireland, and also Native American. My great-grandmother was full-blooded Cherokee, so that really played a role as well.
Yeah, you got slammed with ability. If you've got North American First Nations and what I would call the Caucasian First Nation side of things.
Right.
You've got your ancestors were living with the land as opposed to off the land for quite a few generations there, and I think that keeps. I think we all have this. I'm going to throw this out to you. Do you think we all have this, and it's just some of us? It hasn't been blocked, or we haven't had the pile up of science religion, or fear of it, and suppressed over generations. Do you think we all have a more of an intuitive ability?
Absolutely. Everybody has some kind of intuitive ability. Now, whether they choose to embrace it and develop it, or whether they tend to just repress it and just kind of ignore it, it's up to them. I kind of try to liken it to, everybody can play golf. Some play it really well, some really bad. The same basic idea. Everybody is intuitive to a degree, whether it's empathic or psychic or clairvoyant. But it just, I think it matters most if they embrace it when they figure it out, or whether they just repress it.
Yeah. I saw, I was a typical kid seeing shadows in my room. My first full-on apparition I saw when I was 16, and I didn't know that's what it was. It was a kid I was in a bad car accident. This kid was with his dad in the hospital, and my parents said, well, the son, not baby, he was about 5 or 6, he had died. And I said, well, he looked fine to me. And they didn't tell me till later. I guess they gave me this weird look, but he passed in the car. And
Wow.
I described him from head to toe. And that was my first, in hindsight, looking back on a full body apparition. Since then, they've kind of popped in and popped out. But again, because they're full body apparitions, I wouldn't be able to tell you if somebody's walking down the street if it was a person or not.
So mediumship.
Yeah, and I that is coming a little bit quicker. I shouldn't say quicker, but it's coming. I can look at somebody and see, our family volunteer that's standing beside you. I don't communicate directly with spirit guides unless I'm doing cards, oracle cards. But if someone comes through, a family member comes through and has a message, I get that. But I don't, like my friends actually deal with the guides, and I'm still I'm at the beginning level. I'm in the grade school side of mediumship right now. So
well, and everybody communicates differently. It's just like being psychic or clairvoyant. Everybody's way of communication may be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So that may never be something that you communicate directly with spirit and not with guides.
Yeah. Yeah, people I've been told it may be coming, but I haven't been ready for it because they said one psychic friend said, "Yeah, they're kind of holding back because it scared the heck out of you." I said, "Oh, that's good. You keep that." I don't want to be scared. Dwight, you came out of Ohio, which is I always found reading about the Ohio and the lovely Ohio State reformatories and things like that. Yeah. It's quite an active area, very old part of North America when it comes to European occupying it and the First Nations out there. When you were a kid, when did this really kind of kick in for you? Were you like a 5-year-old?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, right around 4 or 5, I kind of had, lack of a better word, 2 kind of epiphanies when I was that age. I did have a full-body apparition appear to me and talk to me. His name was Mr. Bobo. He was a middle-aged black man who became my best friend. I mean, I wasn't afraid of him at all. He was like a mentor to me for many years. He would give me recipes. At 5 and 6 years old, he would tell me recipes, and I would take them to my mom and say, "Hey, Mr. Bobo told me I should make this." And she's like, "Who the heck is Mr. Bobo?" And she never believed that I was talking to an actual spirit. She just thought imaginary friend. But when I started bringing all these recipes to her and we'd actually make them and they turned out wonderful, she's trying to figure out in her head, I think, because that's way before the internet. This is back in the 60s, So she's trying to figure out where the heck I'm getting these recipes from. And I keep telling her, it's Mr. Bobo. And oddly enough, or maybe not, later on in life in my 20s, I went to school, became a culinary chef.
Oh, that's amazing.
So, yeah, he really, kind of guided me there.
I love that because it's on your website. And again, for the people who are playing along at home, it's BeLieveParanormal.com. It's BeElieve paranormal.com. So 2 E's at the beginning, BeLieveParanormal.com. And you can actually click on Mr. Bobo and other recipes from Beyond the Grave. That was interesting. I really got a kick out of that. And, it's not the scary guy who sits at the foot of your bed making weird noises. This guy shows up with recipes and
right.
And that would have just been amazing. I don't know what I would have done at that age. If at 5, it's actually a little bit different. At 3, I think you'd be 3, 4, you get a little bit more frightened. But at 5, you're still open. And, right. Depending on the apparition and how it comes through, you can just, it's my invisible friend to you, but I see Mr. Bobo just fine.
I was actually able to find Mr. Bobo and validate it for Dwight just a few years ago. I mean, we found, he worked as a chef at a boys' reformatory in the 20s, I believe, and we found what we think is his obituary in Ohio.
That's amazing because that was the question I was going to ask you. What are you, mind readers? So, do you know where his his grave would be, or is anything more about, that's a good chunk of his, finding out that part of his life.
It's, you grew up in near...
just south of Cleveland.
Right. So I think he was down, what's the next big city down?
Well, I think he was down around Mansfield and that.
I think he was down that area. So I have it saved somewhere. We have where he's buried at.
Oh, that's absolutely fascinating. And do you know any idea in your conversations with him, Dwight, why he picked you or showed up in your house?
I wish, in hindsight, I had more questions for him, but he was just Mr. Bobo to me. Kind of my second parent, really. I'd get in trouble with my mom or dad, and then that night I had to deal with Mr. Bobo. He'd tell me, okay, you know what you did wrong, don't you? You should never do something like that. I mean, he was, they talk about spiritual guides, and boy, this guy really was, and he stayed with me for a long time, and still, I think, he makes his presence known on occasion, once in a while, even now.
Now, do you think, in your opinion, he had crossed over and come back, or is he never crossed?
I think he crossed over and came back. He didn't, mention anything about being stuck or anything like that. So I'm again, at 5, 6, 7 years old, I wish I had more more foresight at that age. But
I personally think he was one of Dwight's guides, or still is.
Very interesting. Yeah, because, I have, in paranormal investigations, we have gone to homes where the 3-year-old boy is freaking out and running in and jumping into bed with his mom and dad, and then we find out he's just a glow-in-the-dark. He's a beam of light that attracts every dead person in the neighborhood.
Right.
And they're all coming in for help, and it's scaring the heck out of them. And at 3, you can't really help them. And, they've had people come in and they cleanse the house, and they pray and they smudge and do all that other thing. And all these spirits just wait outside, and then they all come back in. Exactly. So it was very hard. But those, I'm pretty confident were the dead people who hadn't crossed. My mother, on the other hand, she crosses and she stands beside me, and I brought home a dead person once from an investigation who was terrified, standing at the foot of my bed, and I was as tough as you could do. I put the covers over my head. This was only a couple of years ago, and he didn't go away. But he had the most terrified look on his face, looking over my left shoulder, and I'm pretty sure it was my mom staring back at him saying, "What are you doing here?" And so there is that kind of... when you do have somebody helping you out, they can, stick their nose into wondering why the dead people are there. But that's fascinating. You actually were communicating with a guide, and your guide, and this is me looking at it, is from your early cooking experiences at the age of 5. That's where you ended up.
Right.
As kept going. And he guided, and that's probably why he shows up there, because that's what his job was. That's fascinating. Rhonda, do you know much about any of your guides or the people you communicate with?
I only know of my main guide, and his name is Michael, and he is Irish, or from Ireland, and he's male, 25-ish when he transferred to the next level, but that's the only one I really ever communicate with. I'm got way too many other dead people coming to me, and I'm good now. I've kind of more concerned about helping other people, I guess.
How do you block? Throw this out to both of you. How do you turn off so you can walk down a crowded street?
Wow. I'd really like to give the standard pat answer where, you surround yourself with a white light and just kind of do that. But for me, it's just more, ignoring more than blocking. And sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, we'll go to a place like, someplace crazy like Walmart, and, it's just almost impossible, to block some of the stuff out, and, we'll leave and just come back another time. It's, interesting to be with us when we walk down the streets of Tombstone, because everybody's bombarding us as far as from the other side. So we generally try to ignore or try to block that when we go to Tombstone. But again, the constant bombardment and everything, it's difficult.
Yeah, in Tombstone, it's not really the living so much, unless it's a busy holiday weekend, but it's the dead that, bombard you there.
No, Dwight, you were on an episode of Ghost Adventures in regards to, what is it called in Tombstone there? The
Birdcage.
Birdcage, yeah. It's the place, down on the left. What did you feel in the birdcage itself? And I'm asking this because I've had a number of people tell me there were certain locations, certain places in there that had conflicting energies. So, and I'm guessing you've been in there more than once. What do you feel when you walk into the birdcage down in Tombstone, Arizona?
The birdcage is kind of a special place for me. I mean, I've actively investigated it now for about 16 years. So when I go in there now, it's almost like old home week, I have one particular male spirit, a cowboy named Caleb, that he gave me that name. So, and he's just your typical, nasty, foul-mouthed cowboy, which, a lot of times is a lot of fun when I go in there. There's some female spirits in there. There's, some male spirits, not just cowboys. And that whole place is really just, it's active 24/7. You don't have to take a night investigation. You can go there at 8 o'clock in the morning and walk in there and you can feel them. I mean, they're always there.
And plus, Leroy is there now.
Yeah, the one manager of the birdcage that I knew for 15 years passed away, and now he's there. So we like to stop in once in a while and say hi to Leroy. As far as conflicting energies, between, some of the spirits or, some people say they feel more good energy upstairs, and when they go downstairs into the gambling area, it's more, lack of a better term, dark. But I have found pretty much throughout the birdcage, it's pretty equal. I mean, no matter where you go in there, it just depends on what spirit decides they want to make a presence known that day, and what your frame of mind is when you go in, and if there's a lot of people there, or if you're there almost by yourself. So it's kind of a grab bag, but I absolutely love the birdcage. I would definitely put it up there as probably the most haunted building in Tombstone.
There's supposed to be something on the stage, like a Black Mariah or the old hearse wagon. And I've been told there was something negative in behind that. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, the Black Mariah is the original hearse that they actually used in Tombstone, the horse-drawn hearse, and that's actually behind the curtain of the main stage there. You can go back there, and you can actually walk right up to it. As far as, dark or evil energy, gosh, I can tell you I've never experienced that. I've experienced, some cranky, mad, ticked off, that kind of thing, but nothing I would consider dark or anything. But again, the birdcage, it doesn't matter where you go. I mean, it's kind of all over the place, but because of the job that, the Black Mariah had to do, I mean, there's definitely some energies attached to it.
I walked in there to do a bit of a tour, and I got about, I would say about 8 or 9 feet in the door, and I stopped, and my stomach flipped, and I left.
Yep.
It just hit me like I wasn't supposed to be there. I was kind of looking forward to getting in there, and I wanted to hang out. So I went back to the morgue, which is kind of odd. They like me in the morgue. Nora's place there, down a few stores down. Have you been in the old morgue at all?
We have.
Yeah, we've been there.
Actually.
Yeah. What do you get from that place? It's a real mix for me.
Well, the one time that we were in actually the morgue area, I did not get a good feeling that particular day. Now, I don't know if that's, leftover or if someone was there that was taken there, or if that's residual energy from guests that were in there. Mm-hmm. I just didn't get a good, warm, fuzzy feeling in that area.
Yeah, I've had that once in there, and it was right at the down where the restrooms were, way in the back, and it was just that kind of I shouldn't be here, which is awkward because when you have to go to the restroom, come on, of course I should.
Yeah.
But you know what? I was right when it happened. I bet you I was right over there's tunnels that go under all those buildings, and I was over the opening for the tunnel. In hindsight, now thinking back as you would go back in there past that bar that is set up in there, which is funny to say there's a bar in the morgue, but there is. It's more a prop thing for the and some trigger objects for the paranormal investigators to go there. But it's the only time. But that walking in the birdcage, I tell you, that was a bit of a kick. And it was a little awkward, very awkward. Now, you guys have written a couple of books. One of them is Speaking with the Spirits of the Old Southwest, Conversations with Miners, Outlaws, and Pioneers Who Still Roam the Ghost Towns. What a wonderful thing to be able to go to a bunch of old ghost towns in the Southwest U.S. and being intuitives and psychics and being able to communicate with the dead. What was that like researching that book?
It was an absolute blast. Rhonda and I, of course, we just absolutely love the history around here. So being able to go and find some of these ghost towns that you don't hear about a lot, or you do, but you don't hear a lot about them, it's an amazing experience. We love doing what we do. And it's not a hobby. It's just what we do every day. So being able to go to some of these ghost towns that either people don't know about or haven't been visited in a while, and being able to connect and talk to some of the spirits that are there, it's just an amazing feeling to be able to get the history from those who lived it, and to get that feeling and you kind of feel how they feel. The research in the book was just, it's something I think everybody should try to do just to get that connection, so to speak.
Did you run into, like, when you go to these smaller towns and even the ones that are unoccupied on somebody's land now, were you getting welcomed to come in and poke around, or do you run into any problems wanting to speak to the dead in certain areas?
Actually, I think every location in that book, we were welcomed. Yeah. Spirits know you're coming way before you even get there. So it was really an amazing experience each and every time. I'm just always so grateful that they allowed us in their space, and they talked with us.
How about the living?
We didn't really run into the living much. I
Not
think
we
did.
No. We try to avoid the living.
Living are pretty welcoming as well. Good. So.
Yeah, some of the ranches we went on to investigate some long ago ghost towns were owned by people that we knew, so it was very easy, just to talk to them and say, hey, would you mind? And they say, no, we don't mind at all as long as we can come along. So, there you go. We love opening up new people to it and kind of giving them an experience on their own land. So that kind of is a neat thing, too.
Tell me about one of the conversations you had now. Wyatt Earp had his common law Matty Earp. Is that true, or was that Wyatt's common law, or whose common law was that?
That's Wyatt's common law, second wife, I believe, yes.
Tell me about that. You had an actual conversation with Matty?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, we've had several. The first one was in the first book, and then we went back again for the second one. for the second book. The first time we talked to her, she was not in a good place or a good mood, I guess you'd say. She was very, very down, very, everything was kind of negative. But she still wanted to talk to us, and she kind of really kind of attached herself, so to speak, to Rhonda, I guess because she was the other female there. But, we talked to her like she was there because she was.
She was a working girl at one point, wasn't she?
That kind of thing, because she's tired of that.
Yeah, I think I think so. Blaylock was her last name, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Celia Ann Blaylock, yes.
Yeah. So, I'm thinking the same person then. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Did she die of just old age, natural causes?
No, it was actually a self-induced overdose, and she died of a suicide, basically.
Oh, that's a shame. Is that why she hasn't crossed over?
Oh, no, she's crossed.
Oh, she's crossed.
Okay.
Yeah, she's crossed. She just comes back, because that was one of the questions we asked her. Have you been on the other side, and have you seen your relatives? And she was like, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So she just, that's a place where, apparently she likes to be, is in, that area. So, and we've run into that a lot with a lot of spirits. We ask why you're here, and they're like, we love it. It's beautiful here. So.
And, if you ever get a chance to go to the Pinal Cemetery, where her grave is, that is just a beautiful, the cemetery is desert, okay, so it's not your typical cemetery, but the view is gorgeous. So I understand why someone would come back there. Not necessarily because they're stuck at the cemetery, but the view.
Yeah.
One of those Facebook live broadcasts from the Tombstone Cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
My psychic friends who were watching it said there were a bunch of people following me. Like a bunch of cowboys were out there wondering what I was doing and looking at the cameras and things like that, and just shaking their heads and being the fool, making the fool kind of thing around it. And while I was talking, but I wish I could see those, but they could. We're talking to Dwight Hull and Rhonda Hull. They are fabulous, intuitive, psychic, animal communicators, paranormal investigators. Go to their website, like in BEE, leave paranormal.com, or just Google Dwight Hull or Rhonda Hull and you'll get there. Amazing experiences in the deserts of Southwest U.S. It is a fascinating experience and lifestyle you've put yourself into. It's absolutely amazing. And we were just talking about the first book, speaking with the spirits of the old Southwest, and the conversation with miners, outlaws, and pioneers. And Maddie Earp, when you see her, what age does she show herself in?
The age that she transitioned, so mid-30s.
Have you ever experienced people who show you themselves in an age where they're having a lot of fun, let's say in their late 20s or early 30s or something, but they actually passed in their 80s?
Yeah, absolutely.
All the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's how it was.
It's not uncommon.
My mother has been described to me when my very first psychic experience. She said, "Oh, your mother's here," and described my mother, who would in her late 20s or early 30s, but that was the time she was having most fun in her life. And then she said, "Oh, your mother's name is Lexa." And I went, "Oh, pick that out of a hat, lady." I wasn't really sure about psychics till that happened. That was fascinating. What other experiences have you had in places like those ghost towns where there are people who have passed away, crossed over, and come back? Do they see the town the way it was when they were there, or are they seeing the vacant land now, or the old ruins? Do they actually see what was there?
So what we have learned on this journey is that they have the ability to see it as it was when they were there, but they also have the ability to see it as it is now. So, it's a different realm of consciousness. So I don't know what you do, but, they have the ability to do both.
Yeah, I've heard that. And I've heard that, for example, my mother goes to a nightclub. When she goes there, it's 1950, and all her friends are there. and the band is there and things like that.
Right.
And that's fascinating to me because it's a strip club now.
Right. Totally different. Right.
Yeah.
So I keep going to find my mom. I just can't find her, which is the excuse I always use.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you were going out and researching this book, did you find anything that was completely unexpected? Did you bump into something that we would call more of an elemental being than a human spirit?
We've never really bumped into what I would call an elemental. However, we did have just an absolutely mind-blowing experience at a town called Sasko. It's an old abandoned town now. It was an old mining town. We went there with our other co-author, Dan Baldwin. And we were walking through the town. This is after we had talked to some people in the town.
We had talked to a lady.
And Rhonda had said, while we're walking around here, if there is any way possible you can show us how it is or what it's like to be on the other side, that would be great. And, we kind of wrapped it up from there and forgot about it. And so we started walking down this dirt road, which is, maybe 8 foot wide, walking down, and we came up to this hill, and Dan said, I've been here before. He said, let me go up to the top of this hill. He said, I think there might be some Indian petroglyphs up here, but I'm not sure. He said, so instead of all of us going up there, he said, let me just go up there and check real quick. We're like, that's fine. We'll just stay down here and kind of, cruise around a little bit. So he went up, and it was an unusually long amount of time, so we started calling for him, and he didn't answer. And we were like, uh-oh, because he's, in his 60s. We thought, wow, maybe he, slipped and, went down the other side of this big hill. And so we go up the hill, no Dan. So we're looking in all the cracks and crevices between boulders, everything else. We can see a long way away from the top of this hill. I mean, we can see all over. It's desert. There's no big trees, You
can see the cars.
You can see the cars. You can see the scrub. You can see everything in between it, and nothing. We're like, holy crap, what happened to Dan? So we're calling his name. We're going down the other side. We go to this big field. We're calling his name. Nothing. We go back to the road. Rhonda's getting very hot because it was a very hot day in the desert that day. And we weren't that far from the cars, maybe 100 yards. And she said, look, let me go back to the car. I need some water. I need to recharge my phone in case we need to call 911. I said, okay, good. You do that. I'll stay here. I'll kind of do another perimeter search and see if I can find him. But if he does come back, I'll be here because he knows this is the last place he saw us. So she went back to the car, and I'm just kind of, looking around, and I look up, and there's Dan walking right towards me, maybe 15 yards from me, coming through the desert. And I was like, where you been? He's like, where you been? He said, I went back to the truck. He said, I was honking the horn and everything else. I was like, you were what? I said, we never heard anything. He said, well, I was honking the horn. I got some water and da-da-da-da. I was like, Dan, we never heard anything. I was like, hold on. We need to go back and talk to Rhonda, too. So we walked down the road, and we got to the car, and Rhonda had just got to the car, basically, got a water, sat down, looked up, and she saw us coming. And she's like, where did you guys come from? I was like, well, I found Dan, or Dan found me, whatever you want to say. So it was a really wild thing because we were yelling for him. He said he never heard a thing. We never heard him yelling and beeping his car horn, and we were only, like I say, 100 yards from there.
We walked right by each other.
Yeah, and the amount of time it took Rhonda to walk back to the car and Dan to come up to where he was with me, they had to have passed on the road. It's an 8-foot wide road. They never saw each other. And we talked about this.
I don't know who crossed over, but that was wild.
Which one of us did it, and it took us literally about a year to figure everything out as far as, because Dan said, okay, this is what I did. And we were like, well, this is what we did, and we were right there. We should have seen you. He said, I was looking for you guys. So it took us a year to figure out that we must have had some kind
of a time slip,
or maybe that woman did show us what it's like to be on the other side. To this day, it's still kind of a mind blower for us that, we passed each other on the road and neither of them saw each other. We didn't hear anything, nothing. So that was probably one of the most bizarre experiences we've ever had out in a ghost town.
Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or have a good list of things to ask.
Yeah.
I wonder where that treasure was. Maybe, they were just showing you, okay, this is what it's like to be on the other side. You can walk down a street and nobody can see you.
Exactly.
Exactly.
The fascinating part for me is speaking to people who haven't crossed over and speaking to people who have. And Nora down in Tombstone there told me that she sees people all the time that have crossed over and come back because they just like Tombstone.
Right.
And they like the area. And this goes for people, and like you said with your friend Leroy at the Birdcage, these aren't people all from the 1800s. These are people from the 60s and the 50s and closer to, like, down the other side of town where people actually live now. And it's a fascinating area, and I personally love it. And I love that energy that comes out of there. Just before we went on air, I kind of threw out a bit of an opinion on why I think a lot of energy is being drawn on by spirits who live there, who exist there. Primarily the non-crossed over ones is the quartz and the silver and the sun. Do you guys have opinions on that too? On what a lower vibration or maybe a person whose spirit hasn't crossed over draws from, so they can be seen a little bit more?
I'd have to agree with the type of minerals that are in the area, the quartz, the silver, the gold, and a whole handful of other types of minerals that are conductive. It's kind of a natural battery there, really. We get lightning storms come in, lightning hits the ground, it charges the area, and I think Tombstone is just sits on top of and around, basically a big battery. It allows the spirits to be there, to be seen, to be heard, or to not be, on the other side of that. Plus just the energy of the people. I mean, as a tourist town that gets, few million a year, the energy of the people, coming in and out of that town, it also ramps up the energy in Tombstone. A big holiday weekend, you'll start seeing a spike in paranormal activity.
When you've got 10,000 people in town. Yeah,
it tends to ramp it up. So I think there's a bunch of different contributing factors as to why it is, what it is. Not to mention, people died there left, right, and center. Every day during the heyday of Tombstone. So, I hate to, use a corny phrase, but the ground is soaked with blood there and energy. So, it's no surprise to me why it is the way it is.
Yeah, and I think they were talking about at one time there were more people dying a month in Tombstone than in Chicago.
Yeah.
It was just, unfortunately that was the way it was then, and whether it was accidents in the mines or shootings or disease, it was just a place that people would go to. Seemed that people went there to die almost.
Almost. Yeah.
In your second book, Conversations with Spirits of the Southwest: More Adventures into the Paranormal, you mention in that book that there was a really it was the most haunted home in Tombstone. Where was that? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. That's one of our favorite places in the world. It's called the Buford House. It's probably one of the most haunted actual houses that's in Tombstone. We absolutely love that place. In fact, we love it so much that we got married there 6 years ago. And we hold an annual event there every year in May. That's our home base. We have everybody start at the Buford House. And we tend to talk to the children who are there at the house, who died there. George and Annie Buford's 3 children that passed away in the house in the 1880s. But there are other spirits there as well that sometimes make their presence known. It is just an absolutely amazing house. The people who own it, John and Catherine, are just fantastic people. They allow us to come in and invade them once a year and do this event and bring 30 and 40 of our closest friends with us. And of course, whatever talent we have come that particular year. So yeah, the Buford House is just a great place. It's original to Tombstone. The owners have redone it. Restored it back to pretty much the way it was back in the day with the original wood floors and everything. So when you walk in there, you really do get a sense that you're kind of walking back into time. And that kind of adds to the allure of why we do what we do there. And plus, we just love it. The kids love us, the ghost kids. We do story time there every year. I read them a little children's book with all of the participants, and we always get great interaction from the kids. And it's just kind of a magical time, and we kind of jokingly say that there are ghost grandkids.
Oh, that's fascinating. So and those are the kind of haunted houses I'd like to be in, the ones that are filled with positive energy as opposed to some grumpy old guy at the top of the stairs.
Exactly, yeah.
I've always blocked, like if I'm staying in some place that's traditionally haunted, I'll meditate and I'll put myself, wrap yourself in that white light and put out the intention, like the only people allowed or the only beings allowed into this light are my guides, my angels, and those who come with my highest good. Everybody else has to stay out, that kind of thing.
Right.
So you familiar with the San Jose house?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
So I'm staying in the San Jose house. And for my listener, this is like the first rooming house in Tombstone, Arizona. It's a lovely little Airbnb place. It's very nice. It's just a wonderful little spot to stay in when you're down in Tombstone. And I heard, just ghosts in there. So, okay, fine. Doing my thing. So I do that, and in the middle of the night, I kind of roll over my hand, because they're narrow beds. My right hand goes off the side of the bed, and somebody grabbed my ring finger and my little finger on the hand, pulled it down, and then ran under the bed going thump, thump, thump. I was mad because I was like, I told you. And a psychic friend of mine said, well, it was just a little boy. He just wanted you to know he was around. And it's the second time after doing that bubble around me that a kid has come through. The first time was in just south of Seaside, Oregon, in a place called Wheeler, the old Wheeler Inn. Yeah, and I got up, went to the bathroom, came back, hit the pillow, got ready, laid in bed, and a little girl said, "Daddy." I went, okay, wow. That's creepy. But again, it was the kids. It seems like you build that bubble around yourself, you put out that intention, and the kids totally ignore it.
Yeah, it's the innocent energy.
Right.
That's what it is. The innocent energy, the kind of the white light themselves. They just, they come in anyway. Yeah. Which is kind of neat. And it's interesting you had that at the San Jose house, because just this last year, a couple of weeks ago when we had our event in Tombstone, we put up our guests, our talent at the San Jose house, Kevin Betzer and Randy Harding from Deep South Paranormal.
Nice. And
they did a investigation in their room, and
they got a little bit of
they got hold of some grumpy old man in there that just told them to get out of the room, and just beautiful EVPs. But
yeah, Kevin was like, well, this is going to be a long weekend then, because I am not going anywhere.
What room was he in?
2, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking room 4 with the little kid.
Yeah.
The little boy.
Okay.
So,
right.
But then again, I did the bubble. The old guy maybe stayed out.
Right.
Sure.
But who knows? It is. You walk around town and then you come back, and you
right. Who knows?
Parade with you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Do you guys ever bring anything home, or what do you do to kind of at the end of walking out of a town or out of a haunted building or perceived haunted building? Well, you don't have to perceive them; they're haunted. To keep that kind of energy away.
Actually, when we're investigating somewhere, we do not. I mean, we protect ourselves before we go, but we pretty much just talk to them like people. Like, if we run into anybody that's grumpy, you got to stay here. You're not welcome at my house. Don't come, just like you would a living person.
Yeah.
We have had pleasant people come back, and that's okay.
But yeah, we've had maybe one or two negatives. People come back with us, and they were dealt with. We tell them, just like any other uninvited guest, a living uninvited guest in your house, time to leave. Not acceptable here. Just. Basically,
you do not want to see me when I'm PO'd out of spirit. Yeah,
it turned into The Exorcist, and it really got ugly. But we don't really have a big problem with that. Every once in a while, we'll have somebody follow us home. Maddie Earp that we talked earlier, she has come back because we invited her. That if she ever wanted to come back and visit us at our home, she was welcome to. But we give them a code, something that they have to do in a certain sequence, so we know that it's them, not just, the power company messing with lights or, whatever. And she has come back on several different occasions and let us know that she was with us. So, especially Rhonda, because they kind of joke and
she's my BFF on the other side.
Her ghostly BFF on the other side. So, but yeah, we don't really have a lot of problem with negatives coming back, but we have had it. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you, Rhonda, when you get PO'd at an energy that comes back to you, what do you do to push it on?
I use my big girl voice, and I just talk to them like I would a living person, because that's all they are, is a person that, doesn't have a physical body. And, just tell them to get out, and a bunch of expletives, and that really takes care of it.
And you guys do space clearing and offer smudging services.
Yes.
In your experiences, can you tell me a couple of them that took a little bit longer than normal, or where you had a bit of an issue?
Yeah, we have run into it. I've run into it on a couple of houses where, during the cleansing that, one particular energy just did not want to go, did not want to relinquish his spot, so to speak, in the house. So, you got to change tactics a little bit and, use different type of smudging techniques, or, I'll bring Rhonda in and she'll, communicate more psychically with them as well as with the smudging.
I'm not the demon when we're at a client's house. It's all mental.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, we have run into that, and yeah, it does take, at times it does take longer to clear it, or to, basically, lack of a better term, show at the door.
And really, it depends on if it's a spirit energy or just negative energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's and that's what I would be a little bit concerned if you had the living person. So what am I saying? If you had the person who's crossed over and come back. Actually, they're really not negative, are they? If you've crossed over and come back,
no,
because they've kind of lost all that judgment, and they're not going to judge you or be too ticked off
right.
with what you do.
Yeah,
But it's the dead who get a little bit pissy, and they think, This is my house. It's always been my house, and what are you doing in my room? Or I really like this spot because it feels good, and you're bothering me when you come in. Those are the ones that I find that would be the least. Or the most awkward to move on.
Yeah, they are. And we have had that on a few different occasions. And when we feel that, when we recognize that, now it's not so much of a smudging cleansing. It's kind of a sit down to have a talk with them. Find out why they're doing it.
We've been called into a house that was having an estate sale. And, secretively, of course, can you come in and find out who's here? Because my mom has seen somebody, and my aunt has seen somebody, and the daughter won't come in the house. So we go, and it's the lady that lived in the house, and she's pissed because there's a house full of people taking her stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, you just have to have a conversation, a very pleasant and nice conversation with whoever's there, and try to help her understand what's going on, and that usually will solve it, at least temporarily.
Temporarily, yeah. I mean, I wish we can come in here and say, yes, every time we go in, everything's great when we leave, and, the world's wonderful and the bad stuff's gone. And, in the real world, it just doesn't work that way. Sometimes, you'll get lingering, bad stuff that just doesn't want to leave. Or generally it's the living person who's just cranky, like you said before, that they love the house, they built the house, they want to stay in the house. And there's not a whole lot, at least, in the 35 years I've done this, that I can do to actually make them leave. I can maybe try to pacify them, calm them down, or get a dialogue going.
Where they can coexist with whoever is in that space now.
And that's the key. That's the key that we try to do. We try to get a coexistence going between them and the homeowners now. And I can say pretty fervently that we have been very successful with that the few times that we've run into it.
Well, and it is about educating the living.
Absolutely.
Really, I mean, and trying to alleviate the fear.
Yeah, of course. Because I've run into so many people who say, well, I don't even want to think about a ghost because they're terrified and it'll kill me, kind of thing. And no, come down.
Yeah, exactly.
Worry about the living people that are coming around.
Exactly.
You guys use, if you go to the website, again, it's BelieveParanormal.com, 2 E's at the front and Believe. You go to, just click on their link there for space clearing, smudging service. You've got a list of the herbs that you use for smudging and blessing. Sage, cedar, sweetgrass, lavender, copal, frankincense, and myrrh. And that frankincense and myrrh, I always get the people saying, well, that whole smudging thing, that's so, that's of the devil. I went, really? Remember the 3 guys on the camels that showed up? 2 of the 3 things they bring, frankincense and myrrh. Have you ever watched the Catholic or a Jewish procession at church where they're swinging something and it's burning?
Exactly.
Or incense or what? I believe personally it burns at an extremely high vibration. And it's like oil pushing water. And then the intent and all the other things mentally that are connected to it will just move heavier energy out. What do you use certain things, I guess, for certain types of clearings, whether it's moving maybe a spirit out or doing something with something. I guess you could actually do it on the land too, like moving things off of a smaller piece of land or a piece of land. What do you find is best, or do you? It's like your utility belt on. This is the challenge, and now which of my herbs am I going to use, or which is the process I'm going to use?
Speaking of utility belt, we need to get you a smudging utility belt.
Yeah, I need to get a smudging utility belt. Only if I can have my purple cowl on, too.
Yes.
I kind of wait till I get there and kind of feel what the energy is. My go-to, of course, is white sage. I will also use, and I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I'll use what they call black sage or mugwort, which does it helps with the white sage to clear out the negative energy and also opens up so it can bring in the good energy. I'm a huge user of Palo Santo wood. That specifically does bring in the good energy after white sage clears it. I'll use it's a red resin that they put on sage. I know it sounds medieval, but it's called dragon's blood. And that's if I go into a house and there's people there or a person there who just is sickly, they feel sick, they want me to smudge them, I'll use that because that helps to break up that energy of, feeling down, depressed, and I'll use that. So it does kind of matter what I feel when I get there. I mean, I come in with a full big case of, full of everything, and I use what I feel is, appropriate for that energy.
Oh, that's good. I use Palo Santo wood all the time. I've never
Yeah.
used the white sage first, but that's a good point. You're using the white sage really just as the wave to push everything out. And then,
Right.
and then what you're saying now is you use the Palo Santo wood to bring in and
The good.
stoke.
Yeah, as a breeze to bring in that good.
Yeah, and it smells way better than sage.
Oh yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh yeah, it does.
Oh my lord! Yeah, it's.
It does.
I think I pass it. There was a place in. Where was it? Man, I think it was in. It was Mount Shasta. I was at, and I walked in and I was thinking, I'll buy a little piece of Palo Santo wood. And it was like a Palo Santo lumber yard. They had all the stuff, and it was all brought in specifically from naturally fallen trees. It wasn't
Right.
It was harvested properly. It wasn't a tree cut down and then cut up. It was all naturally harvested, naturally fallen trees in an area, and that wood was amazing. I could just stood in the aisles all day long smelling it. It's beautiful. So, listener, if you haven't found some Palo Santo wood or use that, it's an absolutely amazing clearing wood. What is this copal or copal?
Copal.
Yeah. What is that?
It's like amber.
Yeah, it's like amber. It's kind of like frankincense.
It's like a resin.
It's a resin that I burn, and when I do that, I'll use a charcoal disc that I'll light first, and I'll put that on the charcoal disc so it continues to burn evenly, so I can get a good smudge and a good smoke out of it.
When you take me through a smudge, is it one of the things that Dwight, when you're doing it, is there a process that you use? Do you open one door? Do you open all the windows? Start with it like a house, or let's make it smaller. Make it like a one-bedroom apartment. Do you open two doors, one window? What is your process of just cleansing a house, a space?
Generally, what I'll do, rule of thumb, I'll open one opening, whether it's a door or a window. Before I do a smudging, I'll do a walk through the house to see where, and Rhonda, of course, will come with me. We'll find out where, we get the feelings of, the energy being stuck or bad energy or the bad flow of energy or whatever. And that from there, I'll decide either what window or what door to open. I try to keep it open closest to where the negative energy is. So I'm not pushing it through the house to get out the front door, basically. But I will always open one door or one window. I will start at the furthest area of the house and work my way around the entire house, generally to the problem area lastly, and then I'll, try to get it swept out of that area and then out the open either door or window. After I'm done with the smudging, we'll walk through again, and I can get a really good idea when I'm smudging that it's cleared or not. But for the homeowner's sake or whatever, we will go through and walk again just to make sure with the homeowner. And generally, when we walk through, the homeowner will say, wow, it does feel different in here, and without us saying anything.
And Dwight is really fortunate in the way that he can actually read smoke. So he knows when he's smudging if he needs to. It's like a masseuse. You have a knot, and a masseuse knows if they need to work a little longer on that knot. Dwight can read the smoke, so he knows if the problem area is breaking up, or if he needs to work it a little longer.
Dwight, when you're seeing that, is it the movement of the smoke itself?
Yes.
The way it's coming off, or as you're moving it with your feather or wand or whatever you're doing with it, is it just once it's away from you, then it moves in a specific form? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Now, both of you see things. See the
we do.
people.
Yes.
When you're moving a energy out of a home, can you see them kind of being forced? Like if you're seeing like a gentleman standing there who was a little bit cranky, are you actually seeing him as you're moving the smoke at him?
Yes. not all the time. On a rare occasion, yes, I'll see the person, either male or female, and it's not like, they
get sucked into a vacuum and,
It's not anything dramatic like you'd see on TV. Generally, I can say almost always for me personally, when I'm doing that, they just basically just go away.
Right.
It just, you see them and now you don't. And then you can, I read the smoke, I'll watch it and everything else to see if, did they really leave or did they not? And I'll just, work on it through whatever I feel at that point.
You're simultaneously communicating with them, or I am, that their energy needs to calm down. They need to stand in the back. They can coexist, but they cannot be heard, seen, felt, anything. Oh. So it's kind of a combination. He's actually doing the smudging. I'm trying to talk to the spirits, if it's a spirit there. But yeah, you're not going to get rid. You can't force a spirit. You can evict a spirit if they don't want to leave. Yeah. But you can help them coexist.
That's the hardest part that we find. It's a friend and I. She's a psychic in southern Washington State, and I would interview somebody who says they have a being in their house, or a spirit, a ghost, or whatever, and then determine whether or not it sounds legit. And then I'll bring the psychic and Skeeter on another line, and she'll take a breath and show up in the house. And then we will interview the ghost. Right. And then we would negotiate its leaving. And there has been only one time where we actually had to, she got a little bit forceful on the other side. And the unfortunate part is that the client had asked the ghost to come in.
Oh, that's hard.
And then it was we had to go through almost a whole divorce thing, pulling a ring off or making a ring, and then imagining it's, and then having another guide come in and basically say, no, you have to leave. So, and then promise and basically say you will never say the name, never ask for that guy to come back in again.
Right.
Which was fascinating for me because I didn't know they had that much power when you actually invite them in. But
you're inviting them. You're giving them permission.
Yeah, and you're giving them power once you do that.
It's like inviting somebody to come live in your house, and now good luck getting him out.
Yeah, which was awkward because that was the person who had the ghost. Right. The person I invited to live here for a couple of weeks, and then she ends up bringing in a whole whack of ghosts to the basement where she was living, and it's like, oh man, really? And then she's left now, and we just sealed up a portal, and we've got a bunch of spirits from the other side of the country, and we got to
negotiate some stuff. Yeah.
Oh boy. So I don't go downstairs much anymore. But they're not leaving. They're all down there, so it's actually pretty good. Now, you both do animal communication, correct?
No, only Dwight.
Only I do. Yeah.
Okay. Here's my bizarre animal communication thing. I was taking a course in reading oracle cards, and on the second card, I had all of a sudden had this image of a big, chubby, white and black cat come through. And I'm thinking to myself, why am I getting this cat? And then the message came through is that the present cat that they have is sick. So I looked at the lady who was also part of my class, and I said, look, this is really weird, but did you have a very heavy white and black cat and with a white patch under it? And she's looked at me and said, yeah, but it passed. And I said, well, it's telling me that your cat has to go to the doctor. And she said, and she just looked at me casual and said, well, yeah, it's coughing a lot, but we think it's a drywall dust. And I said, okay, this is weird, but this is what it said. And she took it into the vet to check anyway, and they said, yeah, it's from the drywall dust, but your cat hasn't been here for a while, so we're going to do a blood test. And they did a blood test, and they found out it was, if we waited about another month, it would either be on incredibly expensive medication for the rest of its life, or kidneys are shutting down, or liver was something was shutting down, and all the correction was catching it this early was a change of diet. So
wow.
She came back into the class, and the next week after, and she was giddy that we basically fixed her cat without costing her thousands of dollars, and it was just an easy diet change. And someone said, so you're an animal communicator? And I said, no. And they said, James, you got a message from an animal. I went, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. You're an animal communicator.
But
yes.
I've never, I very seldom read cards for people anymore, so I don't. I don't
tune in,
and it was very, very interesting. When did you, catch on to this, Dwight?
Again, when I was very, very young, 5, 6 years old, kind of by mistake, I guess you'd say. I was laying on the floor. Our cat came up to me, and I was able to basically hear what he was saying. And it kind of opened up a little bit to me. And, of course, once again, we went through this earlier that, I told my mom, and, of course, she didn't believe me. But when I started telling her stuff that the cat did when I wasn't home, but she was, then she started raising an eyebrow.
Still not admitting that.
Still not admitting it, of course. And so, one weekend I went over to my grandmother's. I told her, and she said, well, you need to sit down. So she sat down with me because she had the gift. So she was kind of my mentor through a lot of my early years, teaching me what was going on and, why it was going on, and kind of helped me develop it. So I really, I give her all the credit for helping bring that out in me in such a young age. But, unfortunately, when you're young, you're not smart enough to keep quiet about it. So you can imagine the ribbing I had all through school, with the kids, hearing that I talk to animals. So they bring their stuffed animals, what's this saying? Yeah, all that stuff. But, yeah, it started at a very early age, and I have not stopped. I mean, I absolutely love animal communication.
And now when the cat comes and meows at me, I say, what's she saying, honey?
Yeah.
Go talk to your father. Hey, I got a question for you, Dwight. Are you a vegetarian?
I am not.
Okay. What is your opinion on the use of animals then? Because I know I have an opinion on it, and I'll share real briefly with mine after you tell me yours. What, as animals, if they have that ability to communicate and are spiritual like that, and I have seen ghosts of dogs. Like,
right.
I've been approached by a dog ghost and blinked my eyes and it was gone, and that was awkward. Until someone else said, "Did you just see a dog?" I said, "Oh my, thank you." We're both being haunted by a dog now. But when we put down an animal and use it for food, what do you think, or do you have an opinion on the sole purpose of animals for food, primarily?
Wow, yeah, boy, I'll tell you, that's a really deep question and probably a whole other show, but. Yeah. When I give my talks, when I do classes on animal communication, I do get asked this on occasion. And here's the answer I give. I am not a vegetarian. I do eat meat. That's the way, I was raised and brought up, that you ate meat. In the animal kingdom, they eat meat. It's a natural progression of thing. We are part of that animal kingdom. Mm-hmm. We just think of ourselves as having a higher conscience than they do. So some people, and I, applaud them wholeheartedly that, they make that conscious decision to not eat meat and not use the animal, which is wonderful. I love that. I have not been able to bring myself to that.
Well, and here's the thing, too, is we see nature as nature is truly ugly. I mean, nature can be beautiful, but we live in an area where we see beautiful animals eat other animals in our backyard. Mm-hmm. That is just part of the food chain. Yeah. And we are all a part of each other, so I'll let you go on with that, but it's...
Yeah, it's a difficult, like I say, it's a whole other show really to get that deep. And we have a lot of friends that are vegan. Yeah. And I love them to death, and we just have that understanding.
But I'm sorry, I can't give up my burgers.
Yeah.
And, I wish I could, but I just can't.
Yeah, and we don't eat a lot of meat, so.
I'm with you. I've through shamans and other intuitives and psychics that I've spoken to who do communicate and have some understanding of what we call woo-woo, the woo-woo,
Right.
That they say their impressions are the animal's fine with it. It knows its purpose.
Right.
If it's raised as a food animal, as long, and the caveat on that is as long as it's put down humanely and all the parts of the animal are used.
Exactly.
Right. Because the spirit is still going somewhere else.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And you have to realize, I come from kind of a Native American background where they ate animals, but they honored the animal by eating all of it and using every part of it. So that kind of, made sense to me at a very early age. Yes, when I was younger, I did hunt. I cannot bring myself to do it now. But that's a whole other show, basically. But yes, animals do know to a degree their purpose. I know there's a lot of vegans out there that'll probably disagree with me, and I understand that. I really do, and I really applaud them for being able to do what they do. But I agree with you that I have spoke to animals, that were, lack of a better term, part of the food chain, and like cows. And I gotta be honest with you, cows are, and I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for this. Cows are not the most intelligent, cognitive animal on earth. They are a food source, I think, for a reason, because they know their purpose. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'll just have to kind of leave it there.
Yeah, I totally understand that. It's when you get that over the thousands of years of breeding for food, or hundreds of years, maybe 1,000 years, for breeding cattle for food or livestock, it's a different energy.
It is.
Yeah,
it is. Now what pisses me off a lot are these people that go out and just hunt and shoot just for the sake of doing it, either for a trophy or to leave it. Now I've got a problem with it.
Yes.
But now we're on show 3, but now I've got a huge problem with that.
I too. I have a friend right now who is ex-Canadian military special forces called JTF2. He is in the Congo right now protecting the mountain gorillas from the poachers. Because they basically kill a poacher, or I shouldn't say that.
I would kill it.
They would kill a gorilla just to cut its hands off.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It was baffling. And he said, I'm just going to go there for 5 weeks and to my tour of protecting there's a number of bands of gorillas that need to be protected from poachers. So he's out doing that.
Yep.
Good for him.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation when he gets back.
Yeah, my hat's off to him. I mean, I was in the military. I was part of different teams and, had to do some bad stuff around the world too. And when I got out, that was something that I thought of doing, is to utilize my training and my intelligence and do stuff like that. But I opted to do what I do now, and that's just help people, normal, everyday people, with their animals. Mm-hmm. and their pets, and it's a feeling like no other. It just absolutely is an amazing feeling when you can actually help a person
understand their pet,
what's going on. And let me just kind of put a footer note to this. I never, and I'll underscore that, capital and exclamation point, charge for what I do. Everything is done for free, because I think it's only right to be able to help the animal and to help the person with whatever issues or problems they have. And I have helped thousands, and I am proud to say that. So, instead of going over and doing what your friends do, which I absolutely applaud just wholeheartely, I opted just to do what I do now, and that's just do animal communication for anybody who needs it.
Yeah, it's an incredible service. If somebody wants to get hold of you, Dwight, where would they go?
Either to our website, Believe Paranormal, BEELIEVE.com, paranormal.com. We're on Facebook too. You can just type my name in and I'll come up. I also have a Facebook animal page specifically for that called Animal Speaks, that they can just type in Animal Speak and it'll be right there. They can leave me a message. They can drop me a line. However they get a hold of me, I don't have to actually physically be in the room with the pet. If they can send me a picture of the pet with the eyes showing at the camera, I often do readings like that, and I'll just do a whole email reading for them and answer as many questions as they want afterwards.
That's Animal Speak?
Yes.
On Facebook. Fascinating.
Yes.
That's really good.
Yes.
This is a part of being intuitive that absolutely fascinates me, is being able to connect with other beings we share the earth with.
Right.
Do you connect with wild animals too?
Yes.
Yeah, and like one of my friends who is she started off on Ouija boards years ago, Karen Dahlman. She had a rattlesnake go through her back patio, and it stopped and looked at her, and all of a sudden it was like they were communicating back and forth.
Yes.
It was like, I'm just going for water. If you leave me alone, I'm going to leave you alone, and slither off. And she was like, okay, fine, off you go.
Dwight's had the same thing with a rattlesnake.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah. To me, that's just absolutely incredible to be able to communicate with everything around you. But then again, one of the questions I always have is the moose brighter than the mouse? Like, what is the level of consciousness and communication to a lower being on the food chain, or a smaller
Right.
animal than a larger, more majestic animal that lives a long time and is large, that kind of thing? Is there is it almost like talking to a little kid, a preschooler talking to a mouse, or is it compared to a moose? Weird. I know it's a weird question, but I'm going to throw it out there for you.
No, it's a great question, and it's not an easy answer, but I definitely can answer it. No, there is really no difference. Mouse is just as smart as a moose. But if you talk to 6 mice, you'll get some that are more in tune or smarter than others. Just like if you talk to 6 moose, you'll get some that connect with you automatically, and you'll be able to have some kind of a conversation. You'll get some that you can't connect with or don't want to connect. So the size of the animal really doesn't matter as far as their level of being able to communicate, because every animal, even insects, which I don't communicate with, I can't, they all have the life force. They all have the ability to communicate within their species and to other species on their own level and their own language. Luckily, with animals, and any animal communicators out there will probably back me up on this, most animals will use pictures and feelings and smells that they kind of convey to you, not actually a spoken word, so to speak. So they're communicating with very complex pictures or small movies. So it's kind of like playing Pictionary in a way. But after you do this a long time, you kind of learn how to put the dots, in the right order. Sometimes it's verbal. You get kind of a verbal sound in your head, so to speak. But mostly, for me anyway, it's mostly pictures and smells and feelings. And that doesn't matter if it's, a wild moose or a domestic cat or a dog or a wolf, coyote. I mean, we get all kind of animals here all the time, and through our backyard, and I try to communicate with them. Some I can, some don't want any part of me. Although they kind of shake their head, literally, and think, what's this person or what's this thing doing talking to me, and they just kind of run off. You want to have a good time? Go with me to a zoo. I love going to zoos, talking to some of the animals. It's both very a good experience and also sometimes bad. I won't lie. Not all zoos treat their animals the best.
Yeah.
But when you can help one of those animals, and I have at a local zoo, the black jaguar that we have here at a local zoo, I was able to communicate with very clearly. Found out the needs and wants of that. I'm making a very long story short here, but found out the needs and wants. We conveyed it to the zoo. They didn't believe me, but when we went back 2 weeks later, everything that I told them, they had redone in that cage.
Oh, really?
And the animal was much happier. She recognized me when we went up to the cage, and she thanked me. And I'll tell you what, if you think for a second getting a thanks from an animal doesn't touch your heart, it is the most amazing feeling you will ever feel.
That would, I can get almost choked up right now thinking that.
I am getting choked up.
Yeah, that would be absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. To be able to do that, and it would also be extremely frustrating, and frustrating is a bit better word than making me completely angry. But going into a zoo situation where you can't help anything, and they're just waiting to die. It would be, my heart would just sink at that point if they were communicating that, or I could communicate with them, and then I'd probably I would have to leave. It would be overwhelming to that point.
And we have done that.
We have done that, and it's very difficult, and people think, oh, it's so wonderful you can talk to animals, and yes, I agree 100,000% that it is, but it's also a curse. You talk about going to a zoo, not being able to help somebody, an animal, and I call them somebody. I don't call them just animals. It's a person to me. Mm-hmm. But it's equally and probably more frustrating for me to go to the park and talk to a dog that's walking past me, begging me for help because their owner abuses them and kicks them all the time. Now what do?
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. It's maddening. You get frustrated, you get furious. There's times I just want to say, you know what, I just want this to go away. But I can't, because I think about all the other animals that I've helped and the people that own them or who are with them. So it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's the policeman in me would come out and say, hey, buddy, stop kicking your dog.
Yeah, and, I'm with you because I'm former law enforcement myself. So, it's a hard thing to do. If I feel I can approach them, I have, and kind of in a nice way saying, "Hey, I noticed some marks," instead of saying, "Hey, your colleague just told me," and you get that look. I can just say, I've seen marks. I see how he's walking. Is there an abuse situation here? And you can tell by being a former law enforcement yourself, you can tell by their reaction if they're going to tell you the truth or if they're lying straight out the gate.
Yeah,
and even if they're lying, and even if they admit to it, now you have to wonder what's the next step? Now I have to go to local law enforcement and tell them, and you can see where I'm going here. Yeah.
How did you know that?
Exactly.
It reminds me of a story from it was somebody hadn't seen their son or for a while, and they're out looking for him in, I want to say Louisiana, and one of the relatives, they couldn't get a hold of the son or the daughter. Anyway, it was a couple. Anyway, they couldn't get a hold of somebody, and one of the people in the family called out to a psychic in California. It says, if you got to get in your car right now and drive down whatever highway. And they said, whatever. And they did it, and they saw the truck, but it wasn't driven by the relative. And they followed the truck down they realized it was being followed, went down a road with a dead end. It turned around, came back, and there happened to be a police car parked on the side of the road, which wasn't there when they first went down. Anyway, they stopped and said, hey, that's our relative's truck, and we haven't contacted him. So they pulled the guy over. Long story short, their relative had been murdered by the people in the truck just because they wanted to try killing somebody. Well, as you know, when you end up taking them to court, you've got to start right at the beginning of the trial. You've got to explain how that family found the truck.
Exactly.
So the psychic actually got brought from California and was the first time. She was the first witness.
Wow.
And that was the first time a psychic actually in the state of Louisiana anyway was used in a murder trial, and where she was sworn in as, quote unquote, an expert witness to say,
wow.
Yeah, she phoned, I saw this. And, I guess defense counsel saying, well, could have been you that killed the person. But, like,
right,
a 60-year-old lady living in California. No, I didn't. I had nothing to do with your Louisiana homicide here. But, yeah, so it does, it is an eye-opener. But when you actually catch a bad guy first and then backtrack, it's easier. But, yeah, going into a police station saying, yeah, I'm an animal communicator, and this animal's been abused. See, now if I still had the job and I was switched on, which I didn't get switched on until 2012, I would have taken the call.
Oh yeah, and some would, but and thankfully we're living in a society now where the use of psychics is getting more accepted, I guess you'd say.
Yes.
And so I'm glad that the courts actually accepted her as an expert witness.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That doesn't happen all the time, but hopefully that trend continues with legitimate psychics giving legitimate information. So these things can come to a close.
Well, you look at the people who do whether it's remote viewing for the government or the opening up cold case files because. They come in and say, hey, look, there's a dead person who keeps coming in here wanting you to go find their body over at, 123 Main Street in the back. And the police are kind of going, okay, we'll give it a shot. And, oh my gosh, it turns out. And then they'll call the psychic up sometimes and say, hey, we're missing somebody. What do we do? And some of my psychic friends who used to be on that television series, Psychic Investigators, they would say things like, well, it's you're not going to find the body. Why? Because it's not your time.
Right.
The body is meant to be found by somebody else 20 years from now. It's in there, and that's their path that it's going. Mm-hmm. Which is again getting to the woo-woo thing, which is kind of cool.
Right.
Question for both of you: what do you think happens to us after our meat sack no longer works? After we die, what happens to our energy or soul?
Oh boy, I've been searching 35 years for that exact answer. The science part of me, which is a big part of me, energy cannot be destroyed, only transformed, and so we go on after we die. Where we go, being psychics, I can tell you we go to a different plane or a different existence. We call it the other side. We call it, some people call it heaven. Some people call it the fourth dimension. A lot of different names for it. And I think at that point, and this is something we are just recently learning through talking with spirits, is that once you do make that transition, you are given or you are allowed several different options as to what happens next. You can either stay there and learn more. You can go back to, basically come back and visit where you were happiest or a time that you were happiest. The list goes on. So, to give a definitive answer as to what happens when we die.
We go on.
We go on. We continue. Death is, and
transition into a higher consciousness.
Yeah, to quote a Egyptian phrase, death is only the beginning. And that's, we have found that to be more and more true the more we do this.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm with you. And what I've learned, too, is that you have those choices and you can change them at any time.
Exactly.
When you're tired of going to your favorite fishing hole or hanging out at your favorite pub, or hanging out with your grandchildren, you can say, okay, I want to go do this now.
Right. And, one thing we found from one of the people we talked to, in fact, it was a lady in Sasko, we had a very extended conversation with her. We said, and what she told us was that she could go back to any period in time that she formerly lived. So if she had a past life, maybe like in, the Middle Ages, she can go back and revisit that. She can go back, but she could not go forward unless she lived it as a flesh and blood person. So then she has the option of being, here we go with the reincarnation, and live that tour of duty, so to speak, so you can go forward in time. And that's what she told us, and we're still trying to figure all this out. This is all new to us.
It was a fascinating conversation.
It was just an eye opener of a conversation that we have never had before.
Yeah, that's crazy fascinating. The whole we talk to the psychic and I when we're dealing with crossing people over. She also deals with people like you have who have already been there, done that. And I guess there was a rule that they're not supposed to tell us everything.
Exactly.
They give off a little bit of information. And the one we have is a thing called the Blue Room, where you go and you kind of download all the threads that we have. Yeah. And we do all our negative ones first and then our positive ones later. And then we transition from that once we be accepted. Yeah, these are all the people I've really upset, and I feel how bad I made them. And I accept that. And now these are the ones I made happy, and I feel that. Then you get to kind of learn. They kind of open that book and say, okay, this is why you were born. This is why you died when you did. This is why you did all this stuff in your life. This is what the plan was. Now you move from that to another one. It's like going to school. And then once you've got all that finished, okay, now what do you want to do? Say, well, maybe you want to go back and try this.
Right.
Okay, fine. But it is, it's not like I want to die, but I'm not worried about dying now. It's like,
no, I'm not either. I'm just upset that when I die, now I have to go back to school or back to work.
Dwight, I never thought of that. Dang.
I'm happily, I'm happily retired now.
But look at all the cool people you'll get to meet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It'd be kind of fun. And they're not going to be grumpy. So, which is
exactly,
we're all going to be happy. And I do get. When I do the kind of mediumship work I'll get people coming through and just say, could you pass this on to so-and-so that I'm sorry. And, and that's about the only emotion that really comes through, other than they're happy, or sarcastic and have a really good sense of humor.
Oh, yeah.
But they're never negative, never ever negative or overly grumpy. And, and I try to explain things to some people, like, they don't really care. Your grandmother's with you, and you get that look on the face of the person, and say, look, they don't care if you're swinging from the chandeliers with the boys' rugby team. They're fine.
Right, exactly.
They know exactly who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, and everything's going to be okay.
Exactly.
So carry on. You're doing fine. Or at least, hopefully, they're going to say, carry on, you're doing fine, or at least... you have change coming that's going to be positive, which is fun. I really enjoy that. We're going to have to chat again when I come down to Arizona. Oh, and that's the other thing. You have mid-May. Is that the long weekend in May? In mid-May?
Yes.
You have a haunting in the desert, and is that in Tombstone? Usually, it
is in Tombstone. Yeah, we always have it in Tombstone. It always starts at the Buford House. That's kind of home base. And then we have a couple different locations that we investigate.
I am going to be there next May. Mid-May, I'm coming down to Haunting in the Desert in Tombstone. Two things I love, Tombstone and haunted stuff. And you guys are fascinating. I want everybody to, if you're in the area, you live in Arizona, definitely look that up. Or actually go to the website again. It's Believe Paranormal, and there's 2 E's at the front there in BelieveParanormal.com. Go to, if you like our little touch on animal communication, please go see Dwight's page, Animals Speak, Animals plural, Speak, on Facebook. Drop by and see Dwight and Rhonda Hull on Facebook and wave at them. It's fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating. I'm really glad you don't charge for animal communication and things like that. And if you have a chance, check out these books, the Speaking with the Spirits of the Old Southwest and Conversations with Spirits of Southwest. And one of those won an award, the New Mexico Arizona Book Award finalist.
Yeah.
Good job. Are there pictures in those books?
Yes, there are.
Okay, good. Because if you, through mediumship and things like that, if you actually figured this out, I won't read a book unless there's pictures in it.
Absolutely.
Great. We've been talking to Dwight and Rhonda Hull, psychic mediums, animal communicators. Thank you very much for spending time with me.
Thank you. It's been great.
Night, and I live in the absence of light, and my shadow has life of its own, watching you while you sleep all alone.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.